ILCP stands for the International League of Conservation Photographers, and we are a loosely knit band of major photographic egos that are to some degree senior in our careers, and we're at a position where we don't necessarily just have to work any longer for the slave assignment, and we can actually do things that we actually feel committed towards. And so people like Tom Mendelson, Franz Lonting, and really big names in the industry have come over into our organization and said, we want to work, but we want to work on behalf of purposeful causes and on behalf specifically of conservation techniques. And so there are now, I think, some 72 fellows, and we come from 16 different countries. And the RAVE is a mechanism that we contrived to deliver media results when just publishing stories in magazines very often takes 6 to 8 months, and publishing books can take a year to a year and a half, not including all the funding it might take to make it happen and everything else. It could be 3 years in the doing. And so the RAVE was intended, sometimes they're building it on the Amazon, or they're cutting timber in the Canadian rainforest or something, and it's happening tomorrow. And a story in National Geographic isn't going to cut it. And how do you address that as a collective group if your group is, in fact, concerned about that? So the RAVE, which was meant to play off of the popular terminology of teenage abuse, stands for Rapid Assessment and Visual Expedition. And what we do is recognizing that all of us in our own right generate press, but when we all come together at once, it really generates press. It's a kind of star cluster. And it may be that Robert Ketchum as an individual photographer isn't quite Jennifer Aniston and whoever showing up at an exhibit. But if Tom Mendelson and Gary Brash and Franz Lonting and Robert Ketchum and half a dozen others all show up, suddenly the media is paying attention. And the media comes in for that, and we get top television, and we get magazine coverage, and we get newspapers, and we get it immediately. We get it the next morning. We don't really even have the opportunity to take pictures. I mean, seriously, we do go out and take pictures, and it does generate magazine articles, and it generates, national press and other things that have longer lives. But it also generates immediate stuff that often has a result. And so we use the RAVE as a political tool. And the work that's on the gallery walls around you describe various RAVEs. There was one in Wyoming, there was one in the Yucatan, there was one in the Great Bear Rainforest in Canada. They've been about things like biodiversity and stopping dams and stopping clear cuts. And so they've addressed a number of various issues. And the photographers involved cover everyone from landscape photographers that deal almost exclusively with habitat, like myself, to amazing wildlife photographers like Neil McAllister and Tom Mendelson, who deal with animals almost exclusively.